to my channel. My name is Margaret. Since I am a new booktuber and I have all the books I've read in my life to choose from in order to present to you, I figured I'd do best in recent memory. So, I don't know, maybe this will be a thing. Best in recent memory. I have some physical books that I still have, others are from the library or ebooks or audiobooks, so I will punch those up on the screen. I thought this would give you good range to see if you agree with my tastes and maybe you want to follow me because you're like, oh, okay, I like the same books. Maybe she'll make good recommendations for me. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I had heard about this for a long time before I read it, and it took me a long time to pick it up for some reason. This is a book that I got used from Backstory Books. It starts off with a bang. It's got a very gripping beginning, and then it sort of draws back, and I was a little worried that it would sort of run out of steam, but it ended up sort of braiding together different storylines and echoing different relationships and experiences in a really lovely way. And there's another booktuber who I just saw describing Glass Hotel, which is this author's next book, and she was highlighting how clear and precise the language is and how that really allows you to get to a bunch of other concepts and feel a bunch of other things because you're not trying to plow through what does she mean by this and that. So that was a great read. Here's another one, Dark Money by Jane Mayer. She's a New Yorker writer, and very, very restrained on my annotations for this one. Usually they're, well, you'll see in a second. So this also was like a year after most people had read it that I picked it up. This comes up to the 2016 election, but not including, and so we'd have none of the details of the more recent corruption. But this is more like detailing the 1970s to the 2015 period in terms of how there's this architecture of basically like money laundering for politics and who's accountable to whom in a really accessible way. So I thought she did a great job in the reporting because she actually tells you what she did, who she went to, all those things. And I don't know how reporters do their job, so that was pretty fascinating to me. But also the main point of the book being that this is like system run amok and it needs change. And so this is a big, big thing for me, fighting corruption here in the United States instead of third world countries like I was trained to do in grad school. So there you go. So we've got a speculative fiction and a nonfiction so far. The next one is going to be another nonfiction. It's more like creative nonfiction or creative memoir. I'm not sure what genre this would go into. Underland by Robert MacFarlane. So I went in for this primed to love it anyway because The Old Ways is a favorite of mine, and it takes a bit of a similar approach. Underland takes the theme of whatever is underground and sort of exploring the dark psychological cavern of human experience in the physical realm in a lot of different ways. So we go underground, which is where oil and gas is. We go underground, which is where tombs are. We go underground, which is where people have dug for centuries and you find other evidence of human activity. We go underground, which is where bodies have been deposited. So you get into a lot of interesting history, which is great, but also psychology-wise, he reflects a lot on how his experiences underground make him feel. And that was interesting too. I saw another booktuber, I think it's Rosie, said that it wasn't for her because it was too rambly and disconnected, but I sort of liked that because I knew from his other books that that's what he does and sort of connects distantly. He also does this thing, and you might not pick it up if you read it over a longer period of time, but he will echo things that he brings up earlier in the book as just like a turn of phrase. And since I was reading this so quickly, I was like, oh, that's magic. So I really enjoyed it. And he's great on Twitter. His language ruminations are really wonderful. So if anyone likes to learn about that, that's on Twitter. Gosh, another nonfiction. Okay, so this is the one that you'll see my weakness for annotation. The populist moment, there's all my things, yeah. So Lawrence Goodwin, and this is a book, I think, from the 70s or 80s, and this was picked up, used, obviously. The subtitle is A Short History of the Agrarian Revolt in America. And originally this was like a seed novel for my research for my current work in progress. And I found so much of this compelling because it mirrors so much of what is happening now. Back then, in the 1880s, what was happening with the changing economy in the US was that a lot of small farmers were being made powerless by market forces, however you want to put that. This comes into issues of race after the Civil War, after Reconstruction ended, and all of that, as well as some of this, and, like how the political system was influenced and who actually had power. Anyway, the echoes that I hear of this are like what we think of today in the service economy of who does not have power and who is working all the time, round the clock, as much as they can and still not getting a living wage. And this is a lot of what they're talking about farmers here. One example I can bring up is that they had sort of model where you would have a company store, and the farmers who would go to the company store to buy their seeds or their equipment would do it on credit, and basically they would sell back their harvest, and it would get stored by certain people, let's call them middlemen, and then however much that harvest fetched in the market, they would pay down their credit, but they could never catch up. It's kind of like the sharecropping model, which I read about in a novel. The farmer owner who was paying the sharecroppers would actually pay them according to what their debts were and sort of cook the books a little bit so that they never had anything to save. And obviously this is corrupt. Obviously this is unjust. And so I feel like our system is kind of rigged like that for everyone who doesn't own property and own a business and take tax write-offs and do all those like secret things to protect wealth. So there's a lot of questions, and I'd love for anyone to be interested in the history of this and talk to me about that in a book discussion, because I could really get fired up about it. So if you're interested in that, in the parallels, let me know. I will totally connect, talk about that. The Weight of Ink by Rachel Kadish. So this is a book that I picked up on someone's recommendation. I'm not sure how. I got it from the library. I'll put it up here. It's historical fiction, so that was like a point in its favor. But it's about Jewish refugees in London in the 1660s, 80s, somewhere around there, where the Inquisition was happening, or persecution in Holland was happening of the Jews. And so they were coming to England, where they had like a tiny foothold of safe passage, but not for long. The author creates this character who might be, spoiler alert, related to someone famous, might or might not be. I'll just leave it there. And makes her a very compelling character. There's that storyline, and then there's also the modern storyline where there's research going into the papers that pertain to her life. So there's this crazy possession, if you like Possession by A.S. Byatt, kind of discovery in the modern time period, as well as character development and really great stuff there, even though some of it's kind of confusing at the beginning. And then it relates to the historical time period long before character development and rich growth that's happening there. So there's like mystery, there's romance, there's coming of age, there's independence, there's so many good things. And so without it being my period, without it being my like Scotland interest, there was lots to love. So I definitely recommend that. And next we have Miss Austen. So I got this as an audiobook from Libro FM. I'll put it up here. And so Gill Hornby is the brother of Nick Hornby, I think, who's a famous About a Boy movie adaptation from a book, like famous, but she is also a writer, and so she's, funnily enough, writing about Cassandra Austen, who is Jane Austen's older sister, and not as famous. And so she's like a writer not as famous, also writing. I was tickled to learn that the audio version was read by Juliet Stevenson, who is, in my world, I mean, she's done a million things, but in my world, she's the mother from Bend It Like Beckham.
Oh, is that the coach?
Mm.
Hello, Mrs. Paxton.
Could you please attend for quick?
Get your lesbian feet out of my shoes! Lesbian? Her birthday's in March. I thought she was a Pisces.
She is amazingly talented voice-wise, and you see that in this because she goes from different voices for people in the same register of class and country to wildly varying regions and classes, and makes it very funny. So Miss Austen is, it's all about Cassandra Austen, but it goes back and forth in time to where she's thinking about when things happened in her life, because it's when she is an older woman reflecting back on her life and trying to do this one thing for her sister after her sisters died. And it's just a beautiful arc and a very entertaining listen. So I would definitely recommend that. And finally, I will say The Winter Companion by Mimi Matthews. So this was one that I got as an ARC, and had not read Mimi Matthews before. She's a romance author, and I'll put it up here. This was actually the fourth in a series, but it's a related but not sequential series, and it's called The Orphans of Devon, I believe. And it's set in the UK, so one, she's already got me. It's a romance in the Regency, so two, she's already got me. And it's got beautiful characterization and like a very sweet love story. I was thrown a little because I hadn't read the earlier three books, and so the characters all sort of melded because I didn't know their backstories, so they kept throwing names out, and I was like, who is that? What are they referring to? But it didn't really influence my enjoyment of the front and center love story. So yeah, that was a joy to read, and I will probably reread it this winter because it's called The Winter Companion. So those are my let's see, my 7 best in recent memory, mostly nonfiction, some fiction, and we'll see if I do this segment again. I don't know. The next video I'll be doing is a dramatic reading and then a mid-month check-in, but I wanted to show you that this is velvet for Victober because I'm participating. So it's my sort of like chimney sweep. No, not chimney sweep. Victorian pinstripe jacket. Yeah. So those are highly recommended. Comment down below if you have other opinions or if you need more information, because I so want you to read these great books. All right. Thanks for watching, and talk to you soon.